Hello, hello. So I am L'Oreal Lipkins, and I just got off a sales call with a client, and it was it was the best call he has run in the last 6 months that we've been working together. And it was so good that I was like, I need to record a video on some of the things that he did extremely well that made that call turn out the way it turned out. Right. So, a little bit of context, I sit in on his sales calls. This is my third or fourth sales call that I have set in with him. And this was a client, a prospect that he has been trying to get a meeting with for months. He was finally able to book a 30-minute call with her. And our standard is you really need a 1 hour call, but she was willing to give him 30 minutes. And so what we did before the call, the day before, is we strategized. So on this call, what are the gaps and loops that we need to open where she is confident and comfortable giving you another hour of her time. And so we mapped out the call. So that's the first thing, is that we did not just hop on this call and try to figure out things in real time and hope that he created enough value for her to want to give him more time. And that's really important, because a lot of times when I'm working with salespeople, I'm working with entrepreneurs, especially if it is a multi-call sales process, that because this deal has the potential to be six figures, multi six figures, it's not going to happen on a one call close. And so oftentimes one of the biggest mistakes I will see is people are asking for time. Can I have an hour of your time? Can we meet for 30 minutes? And you've created no value that would justify that person wanting to give you that amount of time, right? And so my dog wants to get in. Come on. So we had to be strategic about what loops or gaps can we expose, not create, expose. What loops could we open where she would say, I want to have a conversation with you, and we're not begging for additional time. So that's number one, is we had a pre-call plan. We had a strategy. We knew the goal. I'd ask him at the end of your 30-minute call, what does success look like? And we defined that, right? For us, the success looked like we book another call. Well, then now we got to work back. What do we need to ask? How do we need to run the meeting to where at the end of the call, when we go for that hour-long meeting, it is a no-brainer? And not only did she say yes to another call, she said there's two other people from my team that need to be part of that call. Right now, she has skin in the game. This is so important. Your pre-call plan is so important. If you are not deciding what success looks like at the beginning, how do you know you're going to get there? How can you create a strategy that works backwards, right? So that's number one. Number two is how he set the expectations at the call. For my clients, we call that pact. So you make a pact with the prospect at the beginning of the call. This is where we run through expectations for the call. We confirm how much time we have for the call. We tell them what's going to happen during the call, and we tell them how the call is going to end. This is incredibly important, because your close doesn't happen at the end. Your close doesn't happen at the end. Your close happens at the beginning of the call. Right? Your close does not happen at the end. That's where most people go wrong. You're putting too much pressure at the end of the process. You need to shift that pressure to the beginning, right? The NBA finals just finished, right? And between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. And when most teams are behind, right? It is fourth quarter, they're behind 10. What do they start doing? They're double teaming, they're running a full court press. They're putting all this pressure at the end. But what if they would have taken that pressure and applied it to the beginning? Right? It's the same in sales, right? We're not trying to put all the pressure at the end when we're trying to close for the next step or try to close the deal. We put the pressure at the beginning. So your close should be happening at the beginning, meaning you are telling them at the end of the call, these are the things that could happen, right? This is what a next step would look like. And so it takes a whole lot of the pressure off. And then when you get to the end, you can say, hey, so our next step is going to be X, Y, Z, right? So one was the pre-call plan. Two is the pact that he set up at the beginning of the call. Three was the questions that he asked. So one of the things that we were working on with him is that he can talk a lot. He can go what I call monologue mode, right? Where he gets on his soapbox. He has tons of expertise and experience doing what he's doing, and it shows, right? But that can sometimes show up in talking too much, and it could also show up in him getting very excited. And when he gets excited, he gets outside of the process. And so one of the things we really wanted to focus on are what are the key 4 or 6 questions, depending on how long she talks, that we need to get answered that will open up the gap, get us the information that we need, but then also create a sense of urgency and need on her side who wants to continue the conversation, right? So we were very strategic about what those questions were. We had like 25 questions in our process for this particular client. We're not going to ask those in 30 minutes. We don't have time for that. So we looked at those questions and said, out of these questions, which are the most important to ask on this call? And then what are the questions that we want to ask on a secondary call? That's incredibly important. But because he asked the right questions, it created this gap and this interest. And she started taking notes. And she's like, okay, what about this? And how's this? And we're getting so much information on a sales call. Whether you do a 1-call close, a 2-call close, it takes 6 months, 18 months. When you are doing discovery, your prospect should be doing most of the talking. You want them talking 60, 70, 80% of the time. Now, there is a time when we present, the offer and our recommendations and our solutions and all of that, where that flips, right? And we're doing most of the talking. But in discovery, whether that happens on 1 call or multiple conversations, you want them doing the talking, which goes back to our pact, right? We set expectations that we're going to be asking a lot of questions because we want to understand their business. We want to understand what's working, what's not working, right? And making sure that we're not being presumptuous, right? So there's an expectation. We're going to be asking a lot of questions. And so you also have to make sure it isn't just asking more questions, it's asking the right questions, right? Because the quality of the answers that you get on a sales call is determined by the quality of the questions that you're asking. If you're asking very surface level questions, very blah questions, questions that your competitors are also asking, you're not going to get any additional more information than they got. And if you're not getting any more additional information than they got, how are you going to stand out? How are you going to make sure you're not coming back and presenting the exact same thing, right? And so you need to have a set of questions that you're asking, right? And we were strategic for this call because we knew we only had 30 minutes. We didn't try to take a 60-minute call and fit it in 30 minutes. We said, based on the 30 minutes, what questions do we need to ask to now get a 60-minute call, right? So that was the other thing that we did. The other thing that he really focused on was making sure that he built on the things that she was saying, so she felt heard, right? So we didn't just go question on question on question. We took her answers from that one question to go deeper or to go to a different question, right? So it didn't feel like she was being interrogated. It didn't feel like a bait and switch. It felt like a conversation because he does a fantastic job. And this is not something that I taught him, right? To pull that information that she's already given him to build onto the next question that he wants to ask. And then the last thing that he did really, 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 really well, and I was super proud of him, and we've worked on this, is setting that next step. So at the end of the conversation, and he's looking at the time and he's being respectful for her time to say, okay, well, here's what our next step is going to be, which again, he's already started to set that up at the beginning of the call. So now we just got to close the loop. Hey, so our next step is going to be, we're going to set up an hour-long conversation so we can do a deeper dive. So we're not having to rush and I can answer all the questions that you have for me. Right? And I can get all the information that I need to put together some ideas of how we might be able to help you, right? If we get to that point and it makes sense. But he did a great job of setting the appointment. And he left, mind you, other people were being added to this call. 2 other people on their side. He got a date and he got a time. Why is this so important? Because oftentimes, when I'm listening to people's calls, they get to the end and they're like, okay, I'm going to send you an email. And then they're playing email or phone tag, trying to get the next step set up. trying to get an appointment booked. And we think because that person, there's other people that are being added, that we can't book a time. Yes, sometimes depending on how many additional people are being added and their availability and access to their calendar, maybe you need to do some emailing, and that makes sense for that. But I was super impressed that he's talking to his prospect. He's able to end that call with a date, time for the call, the additional people that are going to be added, how he's going to be able to get their emails to get them added to the calendar invite, signed, sealed, and delivered. Hour-long conversation. Potentially a multi-six-figure deal. Right? So I want you to think about the sales conversations that you have coming up this week and next week, and be thinking about, am I doing a proper pre-call plan? Am I just showing up trying to wow them with my personality? Right? Your personality doesn't scale. Personality can get you in the door. Personality can get you an appointment, but it doesn't help you close the deal, especially if you're doing high ticket. Right? The second thing that you want to be looking at is, how am I setting the expectations at the beginning of my call? Am I setting up packs? Am I setting up my close at the beginning, or am I putting all the pressure on the end? What questions am I going to be asking? Right? You should know that. What does success look like at the end of the call? And in order to get there, what questions, what information do I need to get? What information do they need to share? So they're like, oh yeah, I want to continue this conversation, right? So one of the things I often see is, or I often get questions about is, L'Oreal, how do I create urgency? How do I get people excited? One, you don't need them excited to buy, right? Oftentimes when people are buying, it's because they have a problem. When they have a problem, they're not necessarily excited. They're frustrated, they're overwhelmed, they're tired, they're uncertain. They don't know what it is that they need to be doing. Okay, so they're not excited. That's one. But two, the way that you create urgency is through the questions that you're asking, and the urgency is now on their side, not just yours. Okay, and so you've got to be thinking, am I asking the right questions? Do I know what questions to be asking? Are these the questions that actually give me additional information? Again, the quality of your questions determines the quality of your answers that you're getting and the urgency that's being created. I'll give you one quick example, right? I was on another call with this rep a few months ago, probably a month ago. We're sitting on a sales call. There's 3 people on their side. It's he and I on this call. And he was asking, I'm gonna try to remember. He said, would it be helpful if your salespeople had these reports? And do you think that would help them in their conversations with potential clients? And the guy said, well, obviously, of course it would. So he got confirmation from the prospect, oh yeah, that would be helpful, but it didn't actually advance the conversation. And so I told him, I said, next time, instead of saying, would it be helpful if, and now we're just getting a yes or no answer, we could ask, how would it help your sales team if they had a report that they could then show to a client when they are 90 days out from onboarding or from renewal? Oh, well, now he's going to have to explain, because it's not, would it be helpful? It's how would that help them? Oh, it's going to help them be more confident. It's going to help them. Now we gather more information. So we get not only confirmation that, yes, that would be helpful. That's implied. Now we get a conversation and details of how it's going to be able to help them. So much more valuable. Same topic, different question, better answer. Now who's selling who? The prospect is selling themselves on why that reporting would be helpful. Okay. And the last thing that you want to be thinking about is how you're ending your call. Are you setting clear next steps, date, time, who needs to be there, and what's going to be happening next? Ideally, you can get that on the call. Think about, this person was busy. He's already had months trying to nail this person down to a conversation. We get off, and now if I don't get a date and time, if I don't set a clear next step, that's weeks, potentially more months of trying to get the next step scheduled. Can we get a date, time? Who needs to be involved, and what are we talking about? Last thing I'll say, this not only helps you as a rep or as the entrepreneur business owner, it is helpful for them. Your prospects, your potential clients are busy in their businesses and their lives with their families, with responsibilities. Being able to say, hey, I know that you're busy. How about we go ahead and put some time on the calendar so you can check this off the box? All you got to do is think about showing up for our next conversation. That's their benefit. It's helpful for them, not only helpful for you, right? So hopefully this was helpful conversation and kind of gives you an idea of some places that you could be thinking about your own sales process, ways that you can improve. Oftentimes, it's not huge shifts that we need to make to increase our conversions. It's small, little tweaks. And I know from my client's perspective, it's helpful to have somebody else that can see it, whether it's actually having me on your calls, whether it's having someone who can review your call and give you some feedback, whether it's someone who can look and go, here's the trends and things that I'm seeing, or here's a little tweak that we could be making, or someone looking at your sales process. So if you have any questions and you're like, L'Oreal, how could we potentially work together? And there's a number of ways that we could work together. Shoot me an email. Reach out to me. We'll love to be able to help you increase your own sales confidence and obviously increase your sales conversions. All right, so go out there and sell something.